Well, hello there. Saturday, noon, Eastern time. Must be time to do a little bit of live stream. Always do these things every Saturday. And sometimes we mix in some mock drafts, and that's what we're doing today. Hope you're all ready for this. We've got a mock draft room full. It's going to be a super flex mock today. I know some of our friends from the chat are in there. If I didn't get you in this time, I will get you in next time. Appreciate Mr. Scampers and Dame in the draft, Scott Kobe in the draft as well. Andrea, next time we'll get you. James, I'll get you in there as well. Anyway, so happy to do these. We're going to try and mix these in on the regular, and there will be many more of them coming, especially after we get past the draft. This is probably going to be our last pre-draft, pre-NFL draft mock draft. So next time we'll know where all the rookies are. We can put helmets on them, but always fun to get some establish some values and see where everyone's at on various players and stuff. I'm Bob Harris, if you're just walking in the door. And I'm from footballdiehards.com. It's a website. It's fantastic. You should go there. If you haven't signed up yet, you should sign up and use the promo code DieHards to get 15% off everything. It's available. Hello, JR. Appreciate you coming. Appreciate everyone coming. We're going to have a guest coming on in a moment, and he's fantastic. You all know this, but we'll bring him on here in a minute. Hasn't been a ton of major news since we last did this, and I don't want to hold the mock up too much, but I mean, I think, since we last talked, some teams hitting the field for OTAs, a lot of chatter with the Cardinals. Kyler Murray, will he be ready? Doesn't seem like it. Seems like Colt McCoy will. So we're starting to get some little pieces of little clues. Nothing new on the Lamar Jackson front other than Odell landing there, and apparently the two are somewhat in cahoots. So that seems like a positive to me. Aaron Rodgers still in limbo. Don't think that'll last forever. The draft will resolve some of these situations. Running back still not getting paid. Saquon Barkley would like more money. He's not going to sign his franchise tender just yet. He won't be at OTAs, but not to worry. He will end up playing this year, I'm almost certain. Hello, Darvel. Appreciate you coming. Mr. Scampers, appreciate everyone being here. Let's go ahead, Emil, and start up the mock if you'd like. And I'll bring up my guest, who is also going to be in the mock. I believe he has the third pick overall, if I'm not mistaken. That was a wise choice by him. Gives him lots of time to talk. You know him from the Dynasty Vipers, their YouTube channel, their Fantasy Points podcast. But, man, just in general, Matt Donnelly has become a fantastic asset to the fantasy community. Does great content out there. You find him on Twitter at Matt Donnelly FF. If you are not already following him, you absolutely should be. You'll find him in our magazines this coming season again. So, Matt, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on, and I see you're already picking.
You betcha. I got myself. So this morning is funny. So I'm already 2 coffees in and 2 Philly cheesesteak taquitos into my day. So what better way than 103 than to select Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles in a super flex?
Hey, you very good. Philly cheesesteak taquitos.
Taquitos, yeah. I went to the 7-Eleven and bought the $9 milk.
It
is. It's a game breaker. It really is.
I've not seen these. I'll have to look into this. It sounds fascinating. So what else is going on, Matt? You've been doing tons of content out there. Anyone needs to see right now?
Yeah, you were just talking about the news and notes. I got a little bit of the Buda Baker update there on the trade front. I did a little bit of what's going on in New York? Is it of biblical proportions? We know David took down Goliath. Is Daniel taking down the Giants, as in Daniel Jones? So I got a little bit of a short out on that. And then today I will be dropping a little bit of a precursor there to the NFL draft, big names that could possibly be dealt, including Josh Jacobs there of the Las Vegas Raiders, as per that CBS article that recently came out.
Stirring the pot.
Hey, you know what?
There. Look at that.
Absolutely. You got to stir that pot every once in a while.
All right, so you are watching, of course, on the Football Diehards YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe thing, hit the notification bell, hit the like button. You dislike us, it's okay. We'll get over it. We'll be fine. So we're doing this mock draft, Superflex mock draft, 12-team, PPR, everything pretty much normal except for the Superflex. Last time we did one of these, Matt, the quarterbacks were fast and furious. I want to say, we were the bulk of them were gone after 2 rounds. It looks like we're already slowing down a little bit. We're up through halfway through this first round. We're at 1-7. So far we've had, there goes another quarterback. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks in the first 7 picks. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, your quarterback of choice there. Where do you rank Jalen Hurts?
I've got him right where I've got him. I mean, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen are definitely going to be the first two off the board, then rightfully so. And then it comes down to what you're looking for. And I take Jalen Hurts over Joe Burrow simply because of his rushing ability. We've seen that Konami code in recent years, so that's where he gets a little bit of the edge. And then you've got the unknowns there. So Justin Herbert going right where he does makes complete sense. And then it kind of becomes interesting there how you rank guys like Trevor Lawrence, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, if you're going for those guys that have that ability to run. We know Trevor Lawrence has that ability. He just doesn't show it as often as some of these other quarterbacks. So now we're getting to that point here where we're turning around on the 12-13, the first round, second round turn. And the quarterback selection, it drops off considerably here. So if you don't already have a quarterback, you're probably in a little bit more trouble than maybe some of these other drafters going in there. Now, saying that, Christian McCaffrey went 105. You're basically grabbing yourself a wide receiver and a running back in that selection. You're basically getting two players for the price of one. So I got no problem with that. And then at 108, Travis Kelce, he came off the board. And when you talk about positional advantages there and value-based drafting, Travis Kelce gives you such a advantage on the rest of the tight ends that you can justify having him select in the first round just because he basically had like 100 more fantasy points than the next closest tight end a season ago.
Yeah, and we'll see what that, and I think part of the fun of this is, when you do go not quarterback in that first round, we'll see who you end up getting, especially in these drafts with quarterbacks going so fast. I'm with you. The leverage over the field is great with both Kelce and I think with McCaffrey as well. And I think in the super flex, that's what you're talking about is when that cutoff is, when you switch out of quarterback mode and into the other positions. And I think it is after probably those top four, but it might go a little deeper. Dame Overboard already upset, says she should have taken number 3, so Matt couldn't snipe Hurts. Mr. Scamper's impressed with your choice as well. Hello, Brian Larkin. Hello, Royal Slade. Thanks for coming in. So we've started out with, pretty interesting start. 7 quarterbacks in the first round. So 5 non-quarterbacks, and the non-quarterbacks are Christian McCaffrey taken at 5, Jonathan Taylor at 6, Travis Kelce at 8, Justin Jefferson goes to George Reed at 10, and Austin Eckler goes to Mr. Scampers, who then boldly goes away from quarterback with his second pick and goes Jamar Chase. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think this is what we're here for, to see how some of these starts play out. Boyce and Fuego, Troy Olsen goes with 2 quarterbacks to start off, Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields. Let me ask you this, Matt Donnelly. What's your view of how this Baltimore scenario is going to play out for Lamar Jackson, and how are you handling him in drafts this early?
So we've been a major call. We talked about this on our show earlier this year about the whole Lamar Jackson. We kind of compared it to, remember when Kobe Bryant was destined to leave the Los Angeles Lakers there a few years back and then came back and they ended up winning an NBA championship out of it. But that relationship, it was basically severed. It was done. Kobe had 1 foot out the door. He was ready to go. And I see that very similar with Lamar Jackson in this situation here this year because I feel that there's a lot of hurt feelings there. There's going to be a lot of reconciling that has to go into it. And I think of Jerry Maguire, you complete me. Well, basically, the Ravens go out there and get Odell Beckham Jr. They'd be like, hey, you complete me. We're bringing Odell in for you. Because if you look at the history of the Baltimore Ravens, they haven't necessarily supported Lamar Jackson as far as pass catchers are concerned. And if you look at it, I mean, they brought in Nelson Aguilar. That doesn't exactly ooze confidence in your quarterback moving forward this year. And you look at some of the other additions, Sammy Watkins. They haven't really spent more than $6 million on a per-year basis on a pass catcher since Lamar Jackson has been there. So they go out there and go and get Odell Beckham Jr., who has already been in the club. They've already been doing the clubbing thing together. They've already been FaceTiming each other. So maybe that is part of the olive branch that the Ravens are extending.
Yeah, and I guess, there may be some pieces of this. We never get the full story, right? And I think some of the reporting recently suggesting that, Lamar maybe doesn't need his full contract guaranteed, but just more of it than Deshaun Watson had guaranteed might be the opening here for a much larger deal from the Ravens, and maybe this foreshadows something like that happening. Troy also was going to take Justin Jefferson at 11, but he picked before. And so some interesting starts here. We've got Kev O.B., he's gone Patrick Mahomes and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that's a great start in the Superflex. We'll see who his pick is in round 3. But we have Matt Donnelly has taken 2 quarterbacks, got Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott. We have Voice and Fuego, Troy Olsen with 2 quarterbacks. Everyone else has gone 1 quarterback except Flip Berger and Emil Kadlick, Mr. Scampers, and George Reed, both going with the positional and hammering that positional value and catch as catch can at quarterback. How do you feel about that one, Matt? Kind of maybe, like we've been in a number of these mocks and we worked through them. How do you like that start? The going away, zigging while everyone else is zagging.
Well, if you're going to win against a bunch of great minds, you have to do something that nobody else is doing, right? You can't. You have to differentiate yourself and differentiate your start, and that's one way to do it. You either blow up completely in your face, or you'll look like a genius. So I'm sure he's betting on himself here being an absolute genius, but now I got to make a homer pick here in the 3rd round and get the rushing leader from last season on my roster, even though he could possibly be traded here ahead of the draft.
Yeah, I think that's the approach. I'm going to be interested to see how these teams that started out without any quarterbacks yet in the first 2 rounds are going to fare. But there's still a lot of good quarterbacks on the board. We're still in good territory. Some of the values I'm seeing, Matt, at quarterback this year are players like Jared Goff, Geno Smith. I mean, there's a lot of value down in that. I want to say that top tier of the quarterback twos. Are you seeing it that way as well?
We've seen that play out last year. Like you said, Jared Goff at home, he is a different beast altogether in that Lions offense. They're probably one of the best offenses in the league. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say they had 67 drives that got them into the red zone last year that only trailed the Kansas City Chiefs in that category. So when you got an offense that prolific, you're going to have opportunities to score. And if you're the quarterback, you're going to have opportunities to make passes, especially with guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams this season. So Jared Goff, is another one of those guys who we are underrating once again heading into 2023. Some of these other quarterbacks, like you said, we don't know what to expect Russell Wilson, but he can't possibly be as bad as he was last season. Right. And then you've got Derek Carr getting a fresh start in New Orleans, so that could play into things as well. So there's some good value a little bit later. But you mean Kyler Murray, you don't know what to expect of him coming back this season. Tua Tagovailoa is always going to have those injury histories. Daniel Jones is still Daniel Jones. He's basically, I don't know, he's probably half the problem in New York. I don't know what the whole situation is going on there, but a lot of questions. Matthew Stafford, he's coming back from injury. Trey Lance, is he going to be the quarterback? Is it going to be Brock Purdy there in San Francisco? Tom Brady, he's gone. How are these rookie quarterbacks going to be? Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. These are quarterbacks that have opportunities, especially if one goes to Carolina where they've already kind of put other pieces in place for a rookie quarterback to succeed in the National Football League.
Yeah, we'll see where some of the rookies, people take chances on some of these rookies. As they do in all these drafts, I already see some players coming off. Bijan Robinson just goes to George Reed, who is now 3 rounds in without his quarterback. Very interesting. We'll see if Scampers follows suit there. So want to ask about yours. You've got Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott. I think that's as good a duo of quarterbacks as you could get. Kind of what you would expect there if you go 2 quarterbacks first. And then you follow up with Josh Jacobs. I'm just curious how you feel about him. I'll just say I feel like this is another season along the lines of last year. It's another 1-year rental for the Raiders, essentially, and I don't see any reason why they won't continue to run the wheels off him. Do you feel the same? Do you feel like you maybe got value here?
I think I got value. Anytime you got the guy who led the league in rushing yards and a top 3 running back in fantasy in the 3rd round behind guys like Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. I mean, you got to feel good about yourself there. And then you look at some of these other players selected in the 3rd round, Tagovailoa, Jared Goff. So you got to feel better about yourself with Hurts and Prescott already in that quarterback in the super flex position. So I feel good about getting Josh Jacobs there. He gives me that hero running back, that anchor running back kind of through 3 rounds to go along with 2 quarterbacks that I expect to be in high explosive type offenses.
So some interesting developments as we speak. Mr. Scampers going all in along with George Reed so far on the non-quarterback drafting. For Scampers, we've got Austin Eckler, Jamar Chase, Kenneth Walker, Mark Andrews. George Reed just jumped on the quarterback bandwagon with a risky play with Kyler Murray, as you mentioned. We're not sure when he'll be back, but he will be back, I think we believe, at some point. So there could be some high upside there. It'll be interesting to see how George kind of fills that out. Yes, Scampers doing 0 QB in the Superflex League. Just as you look at these teams, Matt, what kind of strikes you on these approaches. We see Emil Kadlec started with Travis Kelce and Cooper Kupp. Then he's come back and he's landed at least one really solid quarterback in our view, and one with some upside, Jordan Love. We don't know a lot about him, but the Packers seem to, right?
Hey, everything that we're hearing from Packers camp, the players are saying all the right things about Jordan Love right now. They love what he's able to do. They love what he's bringing to the team. So you have to feel that, he's been there, done that. And you have to expect that this is a team that feels good about their situation at the quarterback position, even though they don't have Aaron Rodgers there probably for the first time in forever, right? So things are looking good in Green Bay. And we saw the arm talent from Jordan Love when he came out of college. He had some other questions, decision-making stuff that hopefully he's cleaned up while he backed up Aaron Rodgers the last few years. So I think it's one of those things that could work out good for both parties in this situation.
We have 6 teams that have 2 quarterbacks to start things out already as we finish off with the tail end of round 4. And that leaves some teams that are still be looking. Still a lot of quarterbacks out there, but we're starting to get into that territory. How much, Matt, if you start your draft this way, are you going to focus just more on caution? Hope you get the high end on the skill players, but focus more on caution and get quarterbacks that you're pretty confident that you're going to have a quarterback? Or are you going to be willing to take some chances once you've gone that far?
I feel good about my quarterback position, so I'll probably be kind of punting this until probably round 10, give or take, something like that. Maybe grab some potential high upside type guys to go along with it. But with Jalen Hurts, you got A.J. Brown, you got Devonta Smith, Dak Prescott's got CeeDee Lamb and now Brandon Cooks. So you got some good pass catchers in both those situations. And then I kind of decided to go with a T.J. Hawkinson there, who I think is right up there with Mark Andrews in round number 4 of the tight end position, just to kind of make sure that I'm keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak, as far as that's concerned. And I just didn't see, when I'm looking at these other running backs, there's so many questions here. Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Javonte Williams, whether it's be injuries and history and legal issues going on there as well. So I didn't feel comfortable with grabbing one of them there. And then the wide receivers, again, too many questions. Hawkinson seemed like the right choice at the right time there. And now here, I might just go back to my roots here, maybe go a little bit further down, grab that wide receiver, and go with Amari Cooper here with Cleveland, because I think a season with Deshaun Watson, Cooper was a top 12 wide receiver last season. We continue to kind of forget about what he's capable of doing, especially in a decent offense with Watson there for another full year in offseason. Say what you will about Watson as a person, but on the field, he struggled last season, but he had a lot of rust to knock off from missing lots of playing time last couple seasons. So I think that's going to be kind of rectified. Plus, the Browns have added Elijah Moore to give another pass catcher there to go along with Nick Chubb. So you got to feel that this Cleveland Browns offense is going to be even better than it was last season.
Yeah, I see. I'm viewing Cooper as a value where he's been going. I think in this range, you're kind of on the front edge. You see him going a little later. I'll say this on Jacobs as well. I'm seeing him go a little later in regular mocks, and I find it remarkable. This is where I feel comfortable. This is about where I have him ranked, Matt, where you took him. I too like T.J. Hawkinson, love the volume there. If you remember last year, that 3-game stretch, both he and Justin Jefferson were tied for the league lead in targets over a 3-game stretch with 37 targets each. That's pretty amazing. I was just looking at Scott Kobe's draft at the number 2 spot, kind of went hero quarterback and then went to his stand, Josh Allen in round 1. Then Stephon Diggs, round 2. A nice little hook up there, followed with DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith. Now he goes Russell Wilson. I think Kobe's off to a great start. What do you think?
I think if we get Geno Smith from last season, then Kobe's in a really good spot there at DK Metcalf. I want to believe in Geno Smith. I think we all want to believe in Geno Smith. He was one of the good stories last season, but this Seattle Seahawks offense really only goes as far as Geno Smith will allow it to go this season. So if Geno Smith has a season like he did last season, then expect DK Metcalf to also crack the top 12 amongst fantasy wide receivers because he's that good. He can even crack the top 15 with poor quarterback play, let alone with solid quarterback play. And then Devonta Smith as a wide receiver 3. Let's be honest, in Philadelphia, there is not a wide receiver 1 and a wide receiver 2. It's a 1A and 1B there. So you're getting yourself good value. There's times when Smith was outperforming A.J. Brown. So if you're getting him as your 3rd wide receiver, that puts you in a pretty good position to succeed.
Yeah, it looks like Dame Overboard has jumped into the rookie pool with both feet here, taking Bryce Young at quarterback in the, what is this, round? What round are we in? Round 5. Wow, already.
Yeah.
So we're adding the teams with 2 quarterbacks. So now, currently without 2 quarterbacks, we'll see what George Reed does. But George Reed is one. Flipburger is another. I think everyone else has at least 2. It looks like. No, yeah. So everyone else has 2. George Reed now has 2. Goes Derek Carr. We'll see what Mr. Scampers does at the turn. He's gone 0 QB so far, as he says in the chat. He's kind of testing it out. He says the Derek Carr trade hurt. Derek Carr pick hurt him. Matt, I want to just get your general take on something you touched on with both Amari Cooper and DK Metcalf. I think a lesson I'm taking away a little bit from last season, at least, is kind of trying to not overstate. Look, when we're looking at what we consider not an ideal situation, I think in our mind we tend to make it even worse than it is. It goes back to the caveman days, right? That little scratch outside your door is probably a saber-toothed tiger, even if it's a mouse. You want to prepare your mind for the worst. So DK Metcalf, all these players we looked at that were going to be in horrible offenses last year. It was Amari Cooper, it was Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Their quarterback situations weren't ideal going in. They outperformed, I think, expectations. Are we doing the same thing this year with players like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin? Should we maybe take lessons from last year, or are you just there's enough fish in the sea that I can avoid these situations?
I mean, for guys like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, I think you can take a shot at them. Is Baker Mayfield a good quarterback? No, he's not a good quarterback. But Jameis Winston wasn't a great quarterback, and he didn't care. He just kind of chucked up those YOLO balls, which was really beneficial to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. If he's going to go ahead and chuck the ball as much as he's going to chuck the ball, then things are going to work out pretty good for Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Maybe not for Baker Mayfield when he has 20 interceptions, but he's still going to toss probably 30 touchdowns when it's all said and done with pass catches like that. Not to mention they have a pretty good pass-catching running back there down in Tampa Bay. So I think we are probably unrightfully putting a decline on Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I mean, Mike Evans has done something in the NFL that no other player has ever done, and yet we continue to discredit him each and every season. He's got 8 1,000-yard seasons to start off his career, something that has never been done in professional football. And yet we're talking, has he even been selected here? I don't even know if he's been selected here, and we're now in the 6th round of a Superflex draft. So, again, we are underestimating Mike Evans. He's one of those guys who's going to always be
not gone,
pushed down the board no matter what. And I don't know why, because like I said, right now, based on what he's accomplished, in my opinion, and I may be out to lunch here, he's a Hall of Famer because he has done something that has never been done with consistency. So, so we're watching guys come off the board like DeAndre Hopkins. Flipburger went with DeAndre Hopkins. Well, Hopkins is a great talent, but he's getting up there in age as well. He's an older pass catcher who may no longer be a true number 1, who may be better off as a number 2 option on another offense. But yet we're still sitting here, and there's still no Mike Evans being selected. I think that it's a shame as far as that's concerned. So,
yeah, I do think we tend to overblow these things, and I'm trying not to do that, and I'm trying to. But this is the lesson that we should take from this. If you're out there watching this draft, is there comes a point where value should win out, right? Where for pass production. So don't overstate. Look, nobody's going to pretend it's ideal to draft guys that are not in great offenses. Yet even the worst offenses produce something. And it's just a matter of finding that balance between the points and how bad we think that offense is going to be. And I'm cheap. I like the values I'm getting from some of these players. We see this in a lot of drafts, Matt. By the way, Mr. Scampers did take his quarterback, and he took Trey Lance. So we'll see how that plays out and what he has to do later on to mitigate the risks associated with that. We all know the quarterback situation in San Francisco is kind of wide open at the moment, depending on Brock Purdy's outcome from his recovery. He spoke again this week, said everything's going smooth. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. We'll see how that factors into Scamper's plans. There went Chris Godwin, by the way, ahead of Evans. So round 6. 6'10" to Matt Donnelly. Matt Donnelly gets him. There he goes. There goes Evans. So just talking about him. So Godwin and Evans both go off in 6 rounds, super flex. That kind of matches up to where they're going in regular drafts if you take out the factor of everyone getting the extra quarterbacks. I think it's interesting. I think the same can be said of James Conner, Scott Kobe's first running back off the board. You mentioned Arizona, where we've got people kind of fleeing like rats from a sinking ship, it seems, all of a sudden. You mentioned Buda Baker. You talked about him in one of your shorts. So How do you view this Arizona offense? Is it going to be pretty much the James Conner show early on, pending the draft?
Yeah, I think whatever happens in the draft, that might change things. Maybe we see a trade here going on here ahead of the draft just to make sure they got themselves a running back moving forward. But I sit here and I'm like, oh, man, I don't know about this team. DeAndre Hopkins, he had that trade
request. I don't want to hold you up. Take a second to make your pick here.
No worries. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, he had that trade request that kind of went in there, so we know that there's some issues there. I don't know what to expect from this Arizona Cardinals.
We've heard some things in general about Arizona. By the way, I will be talking with the great Howard Balzer tonight on the SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio show at, I think, 7:20 p.m., and we'll ask him about some of these issues. But all of a sudden, it seems like there's an awful lot of people looking to get out of Arizona. We heard, some problems maybe with the team's facilities and stuff. So just interesting to see how that's all going to play out in Arizona. Waiting for your pick, Matt. Are you getting close? There he goes, Deontay Johnson. Let me ask you.
Yeah, I'm not big on it, to be honest with you. When we look at Pittsburgh's offense last year, they were not known as an explosive offense. I think they had the fewest touchdowns of greater than 10 yards last season. But at some point, you need to find that consistent wide receiver, and Deontay Johnson is going to give you catches. And what I know I've got with Mike Evans is going to be touchdown dependent, especially in this offense. I don't know if those catches are necessarily going to be there. I think you can still book Mike Evans in for a 1,000-yard season once all said and done, and probably 8 or 9 touchdowns. Deontay Johnson, I'm not going to get those touchdowns, but I'm going to get those receptions. So that's something also to play in my head. And I'll be honest, Kev there at pick number 701 really threw me for a loop because I really had my eyes set on David Montgomery. That was my guy here in this round because I think Montgomery, like Josh Jacobs, is one of those running backs that we always underestimate, we always downgrade, we always seem to want to hate on. And I think David Montgomery has the opportunity this season to be a top 5 fantasy back. And I don't think I'm exaggerating this too much based on going to an offense, going from the Bears last season. That offensive line allowed 1.34 yards per contact or before contact. Meanwhile, this Detroit Lions offensive line allows 1.82 yards before contact. So he's got to upgrade an offensive line. And then you look at, I talked to you those red zone opportunities. I think Jamal Williams had something like 22 goal line carries last season, 17 touchdowns. So if you look at David Montgomery's work, and in this offense, and by the way, Williams did this all on 44% of the snaps. You don't pay a running back $18 million for 3 years to give him less than 50% of the snaps. I'm expecting David Montgomery to see at least a 60% snap share next season and get those goal line carries, get those red zone carries. And remember, in 4 seasons, he's got over 155 receptions. So you could basically book David Montgomery in right now for 10 touchdowns, probably 300-plus receiving yards, 35 receptions to go along with that, on top of the 1,100 rushing yards he's going to add on to that. So if you can get 10 touchdowns and 1,400 yards, you're going to find yourself in the top 8 consideration for fantasy back. So I think David Montgomery could be that steal this season, especially in the 7th round. So by the way, that's why I got so confused there looking at the wide receivers. I'm like, oh, man, what do I do? That's my guy. And you know what it's like when you lose your guy, you got to come up with a whole new plan.
Yeah, this is one of the hardest things about drafting is, having a plan in place or what you're going to do when you have your heart set on a player. I could see that in your mind. By the way, Dame Overboard, okay, Monty wasn't making to me anyway. She's drafting right after you with the next pick, so she wasn't going to get him either. And Andrea loves David Montgomery as well. James Furry thinks James Conner the best Cardinal for fantasy. I agree with that right now. Mr. Scampers, by the way, pushing that envelope out there. 1 quarterback through 8 rounds. He just picked up Dameon Pierce and Marquise Brown, so he's hammering the value at the other positions, and he'll see how it goes. I think at some point we'll see some teams start to dip back into the quarterbacks for their thirds. We'll see if they makes it around one more roll for Scampers there on the quarterback situation and how this roster plays out. Beyond that, Austin Eckler, Jamar Chase, Kenneth Walker, Mark Andrews. I think that's a great start. Keenan Allen, Dameon Pierce, Marquise Brown as the non-quarterback players. I think he's definitely taking advantage of the value here.
Yeah, and I mean, Marquise Brown's one of those guys that I had on my board there. A little bit of concern there with Kyler Murray going on. I'm not worried about DeAndre Hopkins being there or not being there in Arizona for Marquise Hollywood Brown to have success. I think Brown is one of those guys who can succeed regardless of who's playing opposite of them there. So I love the value there. Marquise Brown in round number 8. He was definitely in consideration there for me at 703 as well. So I do like that pick.
So Andrew would like to know, Matt, how you feel about Miles Sanders. I feel pretty comfortable with him, just the role of this, on the new team. I don't know that he's in as good a spot as Montgomery for the reasons you outlined, but I do like him an awful lot.
So he's an interesting one for me because he was going from probably the best offensive line last season in Philadelphia. I think PFF gave them the top grade last season when it was all said and done. So he's got some work to do, but I also like the low-key pieces that the Carolina Panthers are putting in place for A, Miles Sanders, and B, for a quarterback to come in and succeed right away with Adam Thielen there, Terrace Marshall. I mean, they've got these guys already, DJ Chark. So they've got some good pieces around there. And Miles Sanders, because of those pieces in place, may find himself an opportunity to make some things happen. He wasn't really trusted in Philadelphia as a pass catcher all that often. They had Boston Scott. They had Kenneth Gainwell. So maybe we see an uptick in Sanders' value there as a pass catcher too.
Yeah, so interesting. Just a few players. I wanted to go back and revisit some of the people who didn't go 2 quarterbacks early on, right? So we'll start with Kev OB with the first pick overall, took Patrick Mahomes. Then he went Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, Ramondre Stevenson, then got his next quarterback, Geno Smith, followed up with Judy and David Montgomery. I think this build is working out, don't you?
I think it's going to work out really good, especially if James Robinson stays away from Ramondre Stevenson. Stevenson's another one of those guys that's going to have great value based on what he was able to do last season. And with Damian Harris now moved on to Buffalo, that should make it for Ramondre Stevenson, considering what we saw from James Robinson on the back end of last season, which means we didn't see James Robinson on the back end of last season. So there's where that value is there. A good, solid RB1 potential guy there in the 4th round to go along with 2 wide receiver ones there after Patrick Mahomes. Anytime you got Patrick Mahomes, you're going to start off the build pretty good. So a lot of these teams are going to look really good for the first 8 rounds. Where we're going to see the biggest difference is probably right in here, where these guys are going, how they construct the roster from the back end out.
Yeah, I like the pieces that he's adding still. The last 2 picks, Pat Freiermuth and A.J. Dillon, who I think maybe is going to – maybe I was a year early. I always like to believe that, Matt. Don't we always like to think that the guys that failed us in previous seasons – were guys we were mostly a year too early on, and then we come back and hope to reap the value next year when they really come through?
Yeah, that's always the worst, though, when you're like a year early and someone else grabs them before you can the next season because you're already in on them. So when you're in your redraft, and this has happened, I think, to me a couple times in the Kings Classic, where I was a year too early on a player, and then the next season I kind of put them down and around in my board.
Yes.
Someone moved them up on their board, and they got them before I could. You're like, I really believed in that guy. No different than, like I said, when I'm looking at this draft, there's times where I was like, you know what? Maybe I should have gone David Montgomery ahead of Amari Cooper because I believe so much in David Montgomery. Meanwhile, someone else is like, no, I'm not letting him come back to you. So, I mean, that's kind of where it is. I really do believe that a guy like David Montgomery is going to be a top 12 fantasy back. I think I got him right now ranked at number 8 going into next season. And yet, even I let him drop, think I can maybe get him a little bit later. And that's a mistake we often make. When we say go get your guys, you better get your guys when you can get them. Because there's no guarantee a player's going to drop another round because someone else may be thinking just like you are. These last 2 picks here, 905, 906. Christian Kirk is one of my guys. I preach on him each and every year. Great value there in the 9th round, especially as your wide receiver 4. And then Brandon Cooks there as a wide receiver 3 for Flipburger. Another good value there.
Yeah, so people are asking about, would like to hear. And by the way, if you just tuned in, I'm Bob Harris from Football Diehards. This is our regular Saturday live stream. We like to do these mock drafts on occasions. This one happens to be a Superflex 12-team PPR mock draft. So if you're seeing the quarterbacks going early, that's why people are playing 2 of them. Scampers didn't get the memo. Well, he did, but he's taken a different approach. Matt Donnelly from Dynasty Vipers is with me here. You can follow him on Twitter, and I recommend you do, at Matt Donnelly FF, MattDonnellyFF. And again, check out his content at Dynasty Vipers as well. He does great work there. Matt, people want to hear your take on Calvin Ridley. He went in the 6th round. I think he's been going a little higher. If this were a regular draft, I think I see him going often in the 4th round. Regular redraft or regular best ball drafts. Where are you at on him? What are your expectations? And what I view as an offense on the rise, right? And I think everyone does.
I love this Duval offense, right? Jacksonville, you got Trevor Lawrence, you got Travis Etienne, Zay Jones, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk. I still believe when it's all said and done, Christian Kirk is still that wide receiver one in this offense. I don't think we're going. People are expecting Calvin Ridley to be Calvin Ridley of the Atlanta Falcons prior to his year suspension. It's going to take him some time to get back into it. So, sixth round, I find that a little bit too early for me, considering you're probably not going to get the Calvin Ridley you're expecting until week number 6 or 7. I mean, it's going to take him some time to get that rust off for himself. So I like Calvin Ridley. I just think the round 6 is too high. I think I'd rather have Christian Kirk than Calvin Ridley here, at least for 2023.
I see, just based on the values. I think there's so here we have Mr. Scampers sticking with the no quarterback through his first pick of his back-to-backs here. It'd be interesting. There he goes with his second quarterback. He is now locked down the San Francisco quarterback. I thought that might be the approach. I think if I had started out this way, that's how I do it, and then I'll grab another quarterback. Hopefully, a solid starter with some job security and maybe a little less upside, but maybe not. We'll see how it plays out. This is how I would have approached that, Matt. How do you feel about this general? I mean, this is obviously an experimental approach. It's a mock draft. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think he's going to be able to get Sam Darnold in round 15 if he really wants to make sure he's got that quarterback situation under control. But I mean, if you have to do it, you have to do it. You look at some of those quarterbacks that came after Trey Lance, Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud. I mean, there was no other quarterbacks that were really there for him. And this is one of those things. It's like, okay, I'm selecting a quarterback in the 5th round of a super flex. I need to make sure I'm hitting on these first 4 rounds. That's the main thing. You have to make sure, and I think he did there. Eckler, Chase, Walker, Andrews. He hit on each one of those picks. Because if you miss on one of those picks and you're down to your first quarterback in round 5, you're putting yourself in a very bad position, especially to succeed later on down the season. So I think he's in okay shape, but you look at the quarterbacks that are still on the board, Matthew Stafford, Jimmy Garoppolo. Okay, those guys could possibly get it. I don't even know if those guys will get back to him here. And then you look at Sam Howell, Ritter, Mac Jones, Tannehill, Baker Mayfield. So many questions with those quarterbacks that you may be better off starting a running back in your super flex rather than trying to get any of those guys in your lineup.
Yeah, I think that's look. I'm still going to play the guy that has the ball in his hands every snap, but I get that point. I think it's a fair point. So some of these other teams that started out with one quarterback and then waited a little while. Scott Kobe, I think, has got a pretty. He always does, right? He started out with Josh Allen with the 2nd pick overall, paired him up with Diggs, followed up with Metcalf and Devontae Smith. 3 guys I think are all wide receiver ones in my view, or close to it. Devontae Smith, a 1B to A.J. Brown's 1. Follow that up with Russell Wilson, who both Matt and I think at least has a chance to rebound. I mean, the bar is so low, it can't – I dread even saying it can't be worse than it was last year because that almost certainly guarantees it. But I think we're all expecting a bit of a rebound. He followed that up with 3 solid backs and another solid wide receiver. James Conner, Miles Sanders, Tyler Algier, and he wrapped in there the round before he got Algier. Cortland Sutton, well after Jerry Jeudy. I'm trying to see where Jeudy went in this draft, but a fair amount after Jerry Jeudy. This seems like a good value play with Russell Wilson already on board, right?
It is. Russell Wilson, like I said, we're expecting him to have a better season this season than last season. He's got Jerry Jeudy, who should take that. He was battling some injuries last season, so that should increase. They improved that offensive line. They went out there and got a guard and a tackle there in McGinchey there. So they've solidified that. You know, the Sean Payton type offense, he likes to build that line, especially that interior line, so especially for a smaller quarterback, so they have that ability to step up. He's got a little bit of experience working with a smaller quarterback and having a good track record of success there. So I would expect him to carry a lot of that over with from New Orleans to Denver, and I think you're going to see a bounce back from Russell Wilson this season where he could be definitely a top 15 fantasy quarterback. So I think at round number 5, that's some pretty good value.
I think that's very possible as well. I see you take Darnell Mooney. I know you have a pick coming up, so I'm going to run down your team as you prepare to make this pick so I don't hold you up. Kobe will pick ahead of you. But the Darnell Mooney, the least surprising pick of this draft, you're still all in. We'll ask you about that in a moment here. But you started out with Hurts, Prescott, with Josh Jacobs, T.J. Hawkinson, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Deontay Johnson. I think this is a pretty damn good start. Brian Robinson, who to me, a bit of a forgotten player there. And Andrea in the chat mentions another Broncos wide receiver that's kind of exciting. as well. And here we go. Matt Donnelly gets what he perceives to be another wide receiver one. So then Brian Robinson, kind of a forgotten piece in my mind. I see him going way late. I think expecting him to get the bulk of the workload doesn't seem like a reach. And Rashad Penny, who I've been told by local observers is going to be the man, and as long as he can be it, remains a locked out upright position. Darnell Mooney, now relieved of the wide receiver one duties, can he flourish again? And Rashad Bateman, the Baltimore Ravens receiver, a former first-round pick with tons of talent, just hasn't fulfilled it. How do you feel about this roster so far, Matt?
I'm liking it. I'm liking the value that's falling into me. Brian Robinson, you're getting a starting running back here in the 8th round, which is a good compliment to Josh Jacobs after going 3 wide receivers prior to that. You're getting a guy there that, let's be honest, Eric Bieniemy is now taking over as the offensive coordinator. He has something to prove to get this Washington Commanders offense going, and it's going to go with Brian Robinson. He's going to be a 3 yards in a cloud of dust type running back, but the volume's going to be there. I'm really excited about Rashad Bateman. We talk about boom versus bust. If you're this late in the draft, you want to try and hit on some upside. There's not any running back that has a higher ceiling, a higher upside than Rashad Penny. 6 yards per carry in his career, 5.7 yards per carry the last 2 seasons. He literally ran for like 495 yards and like 5 touchdowns in a 3-game stretch there just a couple seasons ago. Arguably the most efficient running back in the National Football League, and now he gets to run behind one of the best offensive lines in the National Football League. Last year, the Eagles allowed contact at or before the line of scrimmage only 39% of the time, which was the best in the league. So if you get a guy who's efficient like Penny, not getting contacted until the second level, that is going to add up to huge fantasy production. The problem is he has to be on the field, and that's always been the knock on Penny. If Penny is healthy and playing 15 games, he is going to be, again, easily a top 12 running back in fantasy. However, the problem is there's no guarantee he plays more than 8 games this season, right? And that's kind of been the biggest knock on him. And then we talk about these wide receivers. Hey, I planted my flag on Darnell Mooney. I've wrote about him in the Football Diehards magazines. I'm still all in. I think he's a wide receiver 2 there in Chicago. That is where he's best suited to have success. And then Rashad Bateman, we know the talent. And especially if he flips back to number 0, agent 0 there. I mean, what has more swag than dropping a 0 as a wide receiver like Calvin Ridley already did? So Bateman there, opposite of Odell Beckham Jr. with Mark Andrews. The pressure's off him there. As long as Lamar Jackson comes back, I think you can expect a very good season from Bateman. It was only a couple seasons ago where Lamar Jackson was averaging about 34.7 fantasy points per game when Bateman was in the lineup. So you take a look at those numbers, and as a wide receiver 5 on a roster, you have to feel pretty good about that.
Interesting comment here. Andrea had thrown out a name in the chat. I'm going to leave it out there, leave it out of the conversation. But I like that pick, Andrea. I think a lot of people are in on them, including some that I know are in this very room. Scott Kobe also all in on Darnell Mooney. I think so. Wide receiver 2 in Chicago with DJ Moore, and he points to what Devontae Smith did last year. James Furry, I think OBJ in the 11th is a great value, and that's where he went to flip burger. Want to get to one question I had, Matt. Ramondre Stevenson, how comfortable I think he's a fine value here. How comfortable, though, are you with Ramondre Stevenson as your running back 1 this year?
I feel pretty good about that. I really do. I mean, I'm not worried about James Robinson coming in there and taking a whole lot of thunder from this New England backfield because we didn't see him last season. Pierre Strong is probably that guy that you want to grab a little bit later because he is one, as camps start to near, we're going to hear his name called a lot more, especially by beat reporters. So that's a guy that kind of worries me to a degree, but not a whole heck of a lot. So I really think this is going to be a huge Ramondre Stevenson-led team here, especially when we look at – I'm not worried about Juju Smith-Schuster. I think they actually took a step back going with Juju and letting Jacoby Myers walk, right? I think that's a downgrade for Mac Jones in this offense. And we don't even know if Mac Jones is going to be the quarterback or if it's going to be Bailey Zappi here because we've heard Mac Jones' name mentioned in the trade rumors here leading up to the NFL draft as well. So obviously there's some disconnect. And I think this is one of those topics that we're not talking about because it is the New England Patriots, but we know we have some trouble there going down with everything that we're hearing about Mac Jones, possibly him being traded and whatnot. But that's not even the biggest news out of it because Brian Hoyer, who basically said, I won't play for anyone but the Patriots, signed with the Raiders. So there's got to be something that we're not hearing or not seeing going down right now with New England and how players are being treated and talked about in that situation. So I think there's a bigger thing going on in New England, and I think it's going to be Ramondre Stevenson or bust in that offense.
Right, those old school coaching tactics and the hardline Belichickian, kind of approach to the game. It probably works much better when you're winning Super Bowls almost every year than it does when you're not. So we'll see how it plays out. I don't think it's impossible for them to get back on track, but they need to. Mr. Scampers, by the way, finally went in on that third quarterback. It was Matthew Stafford in round 12. I think I could live with that, right? If what we've heard is true, Matt, that Matthew Stafford's elbow is not an issue, he's going to come out and start throwing in OTAs. How confident are you in his ability to maybe play up to a high-end quarterback 2 level, or maybe even above if in that offense with Cooper Kupp and maybe an improved offensive line? Because that also can't be worse, right?
So every year I work on this thing. I call it the heat check. I break down everyone's across the entire league, the depth chart. I'll tell you what, this Rams depth chart, it is ugly outside of the top few positions, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The defensive side of the ball is really ugly, but if you look at it, it's Matthew Stafford, and they don't really have a backup quarterback. And then you look at the running back position, it's Cam Akers, and then there's not really a backup running back. And then you look at the wide receivers, and it's Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Allen Robinson, and then you go Tutu Atwell, Ben Skoranek, guys that we saw last season. Obviously, guys that weren't really able to get the job done. So you have a lot of concerns about what this team is able to do after that. But automatically, having Stafford back with Cooper Kupp gives him value, especially here in the 12th round. You don't need anything else there because Stafford really only has eyes for Cooper Kupp. And Cooper Kupp, we've seen what he can do when he's on the field. People forget about that. I think he still finished last season as a top 24 wide receiver in fantasy, and he only played half the season. I think if you take his fantasy points per game, I think he was like at the top or the second one from the top as far as wide receivers are concerned. So we're forgetting about Cooper Kupp already. Emil never, because he got him in the second round there at 205. But you look at what he's able to do. If you've got a wide receiver that's still going to be a top wide receiver, then you're going to have a quarterback that has to get him the ball. That's going to be Matthew Stafford. As long as that elbow is ready to go, and he's basically been out for an entire season, so he should have healed by now.
I'm working under the assumption, until I know better, that Matthew Stafford is going to be able to throw the football. If that's the case, Cooper Kupp is my wide receiver 1 for the reason you said. Look, this is not a new thing for him. He's very productive, consistently productive. You mentioned the points per game. He was at the top of the heap last year, ahead of the guys that we like a little better this year. Look, I think any of these guys will be just fine, but if we look at the points per game average, Cooper Kupp was 18.6, Justin Jefferson 18.1, Tyreek Hill 17.2, Devontae Adams 17.1, kind of using a generic PPR system here, 16.8 for Chase, 16.6 for Stephon Diggs. So you see my point. Is this might be end up where Cooper Kupp is going to be a little bit of a value for you. I know you've got to get running on something, Matt, so I'll keep you here for just a couple more minutes. Anything you see on the board that really stands out to you at this point before I turn you loose?
Not really. I mean, right now I would expect a heavy run on rookies because this is where you're taking a shot at those upside type plays, especially at the wide receiver position. Anytime you're getting into a redraft type league, we know that these rookie wide receivers typically don't hit their stride until week 7, week 8. So if you're down here in rounds 14, 15, 16, 17, this is the time to take those swings at those guys. See if you can find yourself a Christian Watson type guy who's going to give you production, maybe not right off the bat, but a little bit later. And then again, obviously, you have to have patience with these guys because there's nothing worse than drafting a rookie wide receiver for that reason and then dropping him by week 5 or week 6 because they haven't produced for you. So I'm expecting a bit of a heavier run here on the rookies because we haven't really seen the top-end rookies this season. I think the one thing with this NFL draft, we don't have that tier 1 type talent outside of Bijan Robinson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. And then the couple quarterbacks that we have in Bryce Young there, C.J. Stroud, and maybe possibly Anthony Richardson, depending on what his landing spot looks like. So we don't have what we've typically had where we're like, oh, man, Bijan Robinson, round 1, Dynasty Superflex, put it down. Well, not necessarily in this case. Jackson Smith and Jigba, if he was in previous years, he might not be the wide receiver 1. He may be more like the wide receiver 3 or 4. So I don't find this draft as strong of the rookies at the top end, but it's got a lot of depth. So when you get deeper in these rounds, that's when I'm expecting that depth to start to show and guys to take more of a swing. Like I took a shot at Quentin Johnson there in the 12th round as my wide receiver 6. So I think that is good value at the position. And we're looking at some of these running backs going on. Zach Charbonnet in the 12th round, Sean Tucker in the 12th round. So we're starting to see those rookies start to get drafted a little bit later. But, I mean, there's some good value to be had here when it's all said and done.
All right, Matt, I'm going to let you go so you can get on to your next thing. I know you'll finish out this draft. I think you did a great job. Appreciate your analysis here. Some interesting things that you mentioned about the rookies that I will discuss. But I want to thank you very much, and we'll see you back here again soon. I'll get you back for a full episode one night of On the Hot Seat on a Wednesday here. So I appreciate your time, and you come jumping into draft, Matt. You're marvelous, sir.
All right, appreciate it. Anytime, Bob. Just give me a call, and I'll be here.
I know you will. All right, so I'm going to take a look at some of the things that we're seeing here that interest me. Matt mentioned the rookies, so Dame Overboard. And by the way, a team that started out with the single quarterback early, then hammered the value in between. So Joe Burrow, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, then came back with Bryce Young as her next quarterback, the only other quarterback on her roster right now. The other rookie quarterback that went early, we have C.J. Stroud went at 7'6". Then we had Anthony Richardson at 7'9". I think that seems like about where I feel like they should probably be going in this draft if you're playing that upside. And by the way, Dame went on to get the Godwin. Mike Williams, I thought was an amazing value in round 7. Rachaad White is growing on me in round 8. In this draft, Khalil Herbert, another player I think is perfectly solid. Gabe Davis, as long as DeAndre Hopkins doesn't make it back there, I think we'll be fine. In Buffalo, I'm a little worried about DeAndre Hopkins showing up there. Elijah Moore, Greg Dulcich, and Zach Evans, the rookie running back to be. So some interesting things going on there. Nice draft for her. Mike Seifert. Christian McCaffrey got the start. Then he came back with Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Tony Pollard. Great start for me. Deebo Samuel in the 5th round, I think, is a great pick. DJ Moore in the 6th, Michael Pittman in the 7th. That's crazy value. Evan Ingram. This is starting to turn into a team I really like. This Mike Seifert team. Christian Kirk, Alexander Madison. We'll see what happens with Dalvin Cook, people. We don't know what Dalvin Cook is going to be. If it's even going to be a Minnesota Viking, we'll have to wait and see them. Alexander Madison could turn out to be a great pick here. Treylon Burks, a wide receiver 1 on a not pass-heavy team. Ezekiel Elliott, we'll see where he lands. Sky Moore. Flip Burger started out with 2 running backs. Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry. I love that start. Followed up with Kirk Cousins, Travis Etienne. Then he went into the wide receiver pool with DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, C.J. Stroud, the rookie quarterback. He followed that up with Kenny Pickett a couple rounds later in round 10. So he's got solid depth there. Javonte Williams, we'll see what happens with him. Brandon Cooks, I like. Odell Beckham, a great value. Schultz and Ertz, I think are fine values is there. I'm a little questionable about Ertz, I'll admit. Not sure when he's going to be back. Garvo 2, Justin Herbert, A.J. Brown, Breece Hall. Look, we'll take our concerns about Breece Hall out of the picture. At some point, he's going to be back, and he's going to be a super play here when he's available. Daniel Jones, I think, great pick. Garrett Wilson in round 5, great pick. Mixon at Dobbins, Darren Waller, Michael Thomas, one of my favorites. I can't let him go. I think at a reasonable price here. Who we got? James Cook, David Njoku, Mac Jones is quarterback 3, Leonard Fournette, and Michael Gallup. Emel's team, we have talked about this one with the positional players at 1 and 2 in Travis Kelce and Cooper Kupp. Leverage over the field, guys? Maybe so. Followed up with Jared Goff and Jordan Love, who I think are more than serviceable. I like this approach. Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, Isaiah Pacheco, Kadarius Toney, a player that we all I think have high hopes for because he's in that Kansas City offense and kind of viewed as the de facto wide receiver 1 by many. George Pickens, who I prefer to Deontay Johnson right now. Deontay Foreman, maybe the goal line back in Chicago. Zay Flowers, a highly touted rookie. Sean Tucker, another fairly highly touted rookie. Wan'Dale Robinson got to come off that ACL, but at this point in the draft, sounds like both he and Sterling Shepard will open camp on the PUP, and we'll see how it plays out. Darville, I thought, had a really good draft. I know he mentioned in the chat he wanted somebody not named Najee Harris right there. I'll have to go back and look. But Trevor Lawrence in round 1 with the 9th pick, Tyreek Hill, followed up by Tua Tagovailoa, who I like an awful lot where he went here. Najee Harris, Terry McLaurin, DeAndre Swift, Anthony Richardson, got that third quarterback as a rookie. This is an ideal setup for me. Dallas Goedert, Jahan Dotson, Elijah Mitchell, Jahmyr Gibbs, who I thought went a little later than I expected, Zach Charbonnet as well, Hunter Renfrow, and Josh Palmer. George Reed, thought was a very interesting draft. I've noticed George is willing to take a chance on Kamara, and he's getting great value with him, but he also got Jamal Williams in this one, the other New Orleans running back. I think this is a fair price to lock up that backfield, right? Like, I have questions about Alvin Kamara, whether he's going to play at all this year, but assuming he plays some, locking up this backfield is not a bad move. Jimmy Garoppolo as a depth quarterback is great. We've got Jalen Hyatt, speedy rookie wide receiver. Tyler Boyd, great spot. Troy Olsen, Voice and Fuego, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, Nick Chubb, Dalvin Cook, Chris Olave, George Kittle, and Tyler Lockett and Brand. Look, I love this roster. I like these high-end wide receivers, these high-upside wide receivers that he's getting later. We'll see what Addison does, the rookie, but it's Smith and Jigba got both of them. But Brandon Ayuk, Rashid Shaheed, KJ Osborne, the de facto wide receiver 2 for the Minnesota Vikings, Tim Patrick. Somebody gets traded out of there, whether it's Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick's in a really good place. He might be in a good place anyway. And Mr. Scampas, getting some of my favorite players late, Isaiah Hodgins and Romeo Doubs. Got Samaje Perine in there ahead of Matthew Stafford, the de facto running back 1 for Denver. This has been an illuminating draft. I'm going to go check your comments here and see what everyone's thinking of their drafts. Put in your comments who you think got the big win here, or those who are you drafting. Dame Overboard, not too happy with her team. She's a bit rusty. I'm sure that rust will be knocked off by Scott Fishbowl time. Mr. Scampers did not appreciate that Patrick pick. Patrick is a popular guy. I'm sure Emil Kadlik is feeling the same about that pick. I'm sure he was on Emil's radar as well because we've been talking him up a lot. I think so, Dame. Scott Kobe's Dame, it's a good team. Having a quarterback in Superflex some weeks is overrated. I don't know about that. I think it's never overrated. But I think Desmond Ridder, I don't know. I think this is a solid play. I think the skill players are great here. James Furry, Dame, strong wide receiver. Maybe you should have picked a little earlier. Scott Kobe, this has been in his best draft. I like this draft a lot for Scott Kobe. I like all Scott Kobe's draft. Troy is pretty happy with his. I'd be pretty damn happy with his as well. So put in your comments here who you think had the best draft. If you drafted, put in some of the picks that you felt like were your best picks or some of the picks you did not appreciate. John Mechie goes with the last pick to Mr. Scampas. Well done, young man. Well done. Sounds like the prognosis is good for Mechie, and he's on track, and we'll see how that plays out. I like to end it in a positive note. I really appreciate Matt Donnelly jumping in, both drafting and helping with the analysis. Made some really great points. A lot of them I agree with. I'll look for some of your comments here. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you saw in this draft, what you did in this draft if you were drafting, that you thought was fantastic or that you wish you had back. And love those pieces. I'll remind you, you'll catch me tonight solo Football Die Hard show, Dempsey Free edition. We'll have beat writers from the Colts, Kevin Hickey doing the Colts, Howard Balzer doing the Cardinals. We'll have Travis May talking rookies in hour 2 with me. I'll talk about some of the news of the day. It'll be a great show. Then coming up ahead, next week will be on Saturday, but the week after for the draft, there's going to be a lot of diehards. A lot of diehards on the NFL Draft Week on Sirius XM. And a lot of us here. We'll be back here on Wednesday, 7 p.m. for an On the Hot Seat session. We'll have a great guest to join me. I haven't decided who yet, but we'll figure that out. Go to footballdiehards.com. Check out John Lobb's latest. He's got a new article going up, a sleepers article that you'll want to catch on. It sounds like he's put a lot of effort into this. Mike Seifert, his draft, he wanted a QB. All 4 guys went, took McCaffrey. All the 4 quarterbacks he took, he went. So he went with McCaffrey. Got 5 number 1 receivers. I would agree with that. I thought that was the really strong part of this draft. We'll see if, to me, Christian Kirk a little debatable in that regard, but I'll for argument's sake, I'll take that. Treylon Burks definitely is. So I totally agree with you, Mike. I think you did a great job. And glad you got to try the sleeper app as well. Thanks for coming, James. I'll get you a link next time. We'll get you in this draft. You as well, Andrea. Appreciate you all coming. All right, so we'll wrap this one up. Again, thanks to everyone who came and drafted. I learned a lot. Scott wants to know if Burrow is quarterback 4 in my mind. He is in my rankings and my mind. Yes, I thought those 4 quarterbacks came off exactly how I would have done it. And I'm with Mike Seifert. If I was sitting at 5 and those 4 quarterbacks came off, Christian McCaffrey would be my pick right there. So, and Darvel, who are you wanting to take, Darvel? You mentioned a receiver that you would have preferred there ahead of Najee, but I think the volume is still going to be there. Thank you, Dame. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Mike. You're a legend in my mind as well. Thank you, Mr. Scampers. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody's time and the effort we put into these. Come back Wednesday. By the way, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out our short shelf. We got all kinds of content going up there all the time. So hit those when you see them. We'll really appreciate you hitting the YouTube channel. Hopefully you are subscribed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on anything. I'll be back Wednesday, 7 p.m. Football Diehards tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Should be a great show. We'll outline all the draft plans coming up as we get closer to draft, but there will be a lot of diehards on SiriusXM that week. I can assure you that. Thanks, everybody. It was Higgins that Darvel Hayes wanted. I knew I remembered that, and I think I probably would have preferred that as well.